Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from. We are here today with the General Manager of Comet Backup, Josh Flores. Welcome, Josh. How are you today?
Good, Scott. Thanks for having me back, and great to be back here talking to the ITBOG community again.
Oh, we're always glad to talk to you guys. It's great every time we learn something new about backups, which I think is what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about the business of backup, kind of everything backup related. So let's get started. So I have
Sure.
some folks have actually sent in some questions that we can go over as well. But
Yeah.
we're going to talk about how to sell backups to your clients, which is a big one.
Mhm.
Cybersecurity insurance. We'll talk about compliance, GDPR, HIPAA,
Mhm.
how that fits into backups, and some actually good features of backups that can save MSPs time in their day-to-day work.
Mm.
And then what's the best way to, from a business perspective, to evaluate backups? So,
Mm.
you ready
Sure.
to dive in?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Good deal. Well, I guess we could start, with what are some common barriers that IT providers face when adopting new backup solutions?
Yeah, it's a good question. So certainly, if somebody's looking to, or an organization is looking to onboard a new, backup solution or something like that, some of the barriers might be, changes in the type of hardware that they might need to deploy it. So, it's always really important to not just sign up for something, to understand what infrastructure you might need so that you can actually get the most out of that backup solution, that you're resourcing it properly, whether that be with hardware or just understanding what sort of effort your team will have to put into to ensure that you get that right. And so yeah, the barriers is ensuring they actually don't have barriers through being really proactive and looking at the solution and going, cool, the backup is one part of it. I need to manage it. So what resources can I put into that to ensure that that actually operates with, the best success for myself? Because it's all too easy. I think some people think sometimes, hey, get a backup solution, should just work, everything will be fine. Well, no, you actually have to work with it as well. You've got to be proactive in that product as well.
Test the restores, right?
Te-
Go through periodically and test and make sure everything's working right.
Test the restores. Really check with what it's going to be doing for the types of backups you want to provide, and also that it's going to fit for whatever type of solution or service you're offering to your customers. It's really important to have that fit, because if it doesn't fit for your customers, well, you really shouldn't be looking at that. You're not going to be able to sell that. It's not going to be good for you or your reputation. So, the barriers is best about how can I mitigate it, and then how can I obviously action that as best as possible for success.
So that's a very good point you bring up. Just because it's good for your business doesn't mean it's good for your customer's business. So it's backups are not really a one size fits all, are they?
No, and that sort of, that should really come out during the sort of discovery phase when you're dealing with the customer. If the customer says, yeah, I'd like to have backup, what you should really be doing during that sort of process is going to the customer, understanding what what they're actually looking to back up. It might be a database, it just might be some email or file and folder. And then you're able to, work out what tools or what backup platforms in your arsenal are going to be able to best fit that, because you want to find the best thing for the job. There's no point, looking to say, for example, fully image their machine if they're like, look, I just want you to back up this Excel file, a couple times a day. It's a bit of overkill there. So that's really important, that discovery phase of talking to the customer, understanding what they've got, their needs. Also, another part of that a lot of people sort of skip over is actually having a look at the customer's hardware. We've certainly seen some things and heard some stories about, people going to offer, backup for customers, and they say, hey, it's really challenging. We dig into why it's not working. They go, oh, well, this piece is actually running Windows XP. And we sort of go, well, I think there's a bit of a bigger thing here that you need to be, there's another conversation you need to be having with your customer here about this type of thing. So yeah, certainly really looking at the full picture and not just what's the thing to back up, and looking at that whole thing is super important there.
So, in working with only backups and everything, what are some common mistakes that you see MSPs make when choosing a backup provider or a backup solution?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Some people come with one objective. I just want to do this one specific, backup, or this one specific scenario. If you're looking into this, what you're doing is you're making obviously an investment in your own time to configure it and everything like that. You're
Mhm.
spending capital to obviously buy into the service or product or whatever, and you're really looking to avoid the situation where you get something that actually just is perhaps more than one dimensional. One thing you want to avoid is getting yourself too pigeonholed. So you want to look across something that's going to be able to support a number of different scenarios and perhaps a number of different revenue streams and that type of thing, because that's super important if you're going to be doing that, as opposed to getting a really expensive product just for one specific thing. The thing to avoid here is to look at it holistic and go, look, can I actually apply this to more than this customer? Would this potentially open up to be a new revenue stream and sort of that type of thing? And just to look a little bit wider, than their just perhaps immediate thing here. And even looking a bit further down, I suppose the path in terms of where you're wanting your business to go to, is this something, a service that you could grow into or offer, or sort of that type of thing?
Sure, sure. So when talking about backups and everything, MSPs need to follow a best practices, if you will.
Yeah.
So what are some ways that the IT business owner can motivate
Mm.
themselves and their team to follow best practices when implementing backup solutions?
Yeah, it's really interesting when you think about best practices. People think, oh, you just do it in a certain way and it'll be fine. I mean, yeah, that's obviously part of it. They call it best practice because this is the best way to set it up, and maybe that
Sure.
might be that it optimizes, the backup speed or the performance or that type of thing. But also, you have to understand that when you're looking at optimizing it or using the best practice, it's probably the most efficient way to use the software. So what I mean by that is it's probably how your tech staff are actually engaging with it. So what you're wanting there is just to be like, hey, they're using this the best way possible, that they're not spending perhaps the whole day doing all of these sort of random processes to get it to work right. And if they're spending their time on it, they can get exactly to what they need to do and get it done. We've encountered people before that have these really sort of elaborate processes where they go, oh yeah, but we need to do this in combination with that, and going, well, this is actually outside the best practice. And what you're actually doing is creating more work for yourself and your team when you're not necessarily following that. And as a business owner and organization, that's wasted time, and obviously that's a burden on wages and that type of thing. And it's a waste of capital there. I
And
mean,
not
you could be
efficient.
using, yeah, it's not efficient for your team. You want your team to be doing work that's really meaningful, hopefully either really addressing customers, resolving issues and that type of thing. You don't want them to be bogged down their whole day working on your own internal systems. You guys want to be with your customers. So it's super important to really follow that, and not go down the route that you have your own little quirks and processes that step outside of that. It's kind of basic. I mean, it is called best practices for a reason, but it's more than just getting the most out of the system. It steps into the business efficiency and also your staff, how they operate and that type of thing.
Well, and we talked about it a second ago, the testing, restoring the backups
Mm.
as a test. As best practices, I think that kind of falls in line with best practices. How often would you recommend that MSPs test their clients' backups?
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge testing a platform. The testing, does a couple of things. One, it validates that the data is actually there, that it can be restored if a customer needs it. You don't want to
Sure.
be in the situation the customer calls you and says, hey, I've been paying you for the last year for this backup service. I've never needed you until this second. Please give me my data back. And you go, oh, actually, no, that doesn't work. You're wanting to mitigate that situation. The other thing is, this is actually, again, a bit of a best practice for your own staff, is it actually runs them through being familiar with the restore process.
Okay.
They go, okay, this is actually how I give the data back to them. There's nothing worse than perhaps using it and going, oh, well, what do we do next? Perhaps the customer doesn't have internet at the site. oh, do we need to run to the shop and buy a hard drive to then courier it to them? Well, no. This is where you sort of game out those scenarios to work out, well, what would happen with these customers that, yeah, if we can't get to them, what can we do? How can we provide that information back to them? So certainly testing it as part of it. In terms of the frequency, I think it really depends, again, looking at your customers and the frequency of backups. Are they looking to do a once a week backup and that type of thing? Well, you might be able to do once a week. If they're doing, backups multiple times a day, it might be that you need to do more regular testing, because it's like, okay, obviously there's a high amount of turnover with that data there. We want to validate it. If it's somebody that's only doing a backup once a month, well, you could probably get away with it, a bit longer in between those restore processes. But I think, yeah, I think my points there to take away is, test your backups absolutely as a given, but also test out like what the process is for not only restoring of it, but what would you actually do? Like if some customer says, hey, are you able just to quickly spin that up in AWS, for me? For example, my desktop that you've been imaging. Well, is that going to be the first time any of your techs have done this and they need to be reading, the AWS manual about how to spin that up in the cloud for the first time? That's probably a bit disruptive for the customer. So you should probably, test that out and have a little scenario of just actually your own staff, your own team, testing out these different restore scenarios so that when it happens, you can go, no problem. The staff know, you guys know what you're doing to be able to, give that data back to that customer in whatever way they need.
So it almost seems like the MSP really, as part of best practices, should have a documentation on how to restore and have already went through that documentation, because you don't want to have to deal with figuring it out when you have to restore it.
Figuring it out on the fly when obviously you've probably got a customer on the phone that's quite upset or really stressed out with their business. And you're sort of going, yeah, don't worry. While you're furiously trying to read manuals.
We'll figure this out.
Yeah, trying to do it at the same time. You don't want to be doing that, and you don't want your staff to be doing it. So it's part of the drill. It's like, yep, cool. We can verify the backup. Yes, we also know what to do if the customer asks for it in the specific format or whatever. And the same thing there for like restoring it to a hard drive. I mean, I've spoken to somebody where they were like, yeah, that really killed us. They were offering a backup that was from one coast to the other. And basically they realized that they weren't actually able to get it to them across the internet because they'd lost complete connectivity at that site. And the only option was to FedEx it. And they were like, well, this was like at 2 a.m. and they were like, well, we actually didn't have a hard drive to send. So we were scrambling around and thinking about, do we just need to use a personal drive and stuff like that? It's things like this that you need to be, really looking over and having almost a bit of an internal checklist going, we've got it, we can mitigate that, and just working through those scenarios. Just, yeah, you don't want to make it difficult when you're up against the wall and, customers are grumpy and, this is a bad situation. You want to be nice and smooth. You got this, no problems, that type of appearance to your customers.
Always best to be prepared, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, so, totally.
Well, let's change directions a little bit. I want to talk to you a little bit about insurance, cybersecurity insurance. So how does cybersecurity insurance play into the backup industry?
Yeah, good question. A lot of insurance policies that you'll take out now for your business and that type of thing will have a specific section around cybersecurity and backups and that type of thing. They'll often have a number of questions that extend a little bit further than just backup, like, are you using like MFA on everything? There's even questions that I've seen that are around, what is the frequency of you testing the backups? It's really important to have that insurance. I mean, certainly I appreciate that, for some people it can be, a financial burden, that type of thing, but it's called insurance for a reason. That,
that's right.
If the worst happens, you actually have that there to protect you and cover you. So it's really important to look at the insurance, find a policy that makes right, and ensure that you actually follow what the cybersecurity policy is actually requiring you to do to be compliant. Insurance can be voided if you didn't test your own internal backups for your organization, or if, for example, you guys never, as a company policy, look to enforce, multi-factor authentication across your general logins. It's super important for you, and it's also something important that you can actually talk to customers that you're looking to back up, is actually query with them. Do they have insurance? And if so, do they have, perhaps a cyber protection policy? because you can tell them, hey, we can actually slot in with your own insurance. And you can go to your insurers and say, yes, we've got a third party, backing up our environment. Yes, they're following best practices. So there's some other things there that you can actually use if you're looking to talk or engage with the new customer, is actually seeing how you could perhaps fit into their existing, cybersecurity policy and that type of thing. So it's just a nice thing if you're sort of in that business development phase of an organization, that type of thing.
Well, how does I think we all can appreciate insurance, definitely. Moving over to compliance, what about GDPR and HIPAA? How does
Yeah.
backup and how does backup work with the compliance?
Yeah, and this also slightly relates to insurance as well.
Yep.
So GDPR obviously applies to the EU. Basically, that data that is backed up and stored or originates from the EU needs to stay in the EU itself. It can't be stored overseas in the States or anything like that. And HIPAA is obviously around healthcare data in the States itself. That if you're backing up, say for example, you're backing up a dental practice and you're backing up patient files, that you're following certain practices that ensure that you're compliant around not leaking, patient data, or that, certain people only have access to it. So it's really important to understand that if you're providing a backup and the customer says, I need this to be HIPAA compliant, first of all, you're actually following the rules for that.
Sure.
Because there's quite serious consequences if you're not following the best practices for providing that data. The other thing is often with not only the business themselves, they will have their own insurance policy if they're providing HIPAA and that type of thing. But often that's another thing that you need to either query or ensure that you're complying with for your own organization if you're providing the backups. If you're providing a HIPAA compliant backup, you probably might need to extend that further forwards onto your own business insurance as well around that, because there's probably more things there that you need to be exposing and discussing, because that's obviously another risk profile for your insurance. So it's important that you cover and protect that as well. And with those types of things, again, it's just really high hygiene with your backups. You're limiting who has access to it. Does the new guy that started one day ago suddenly have all the data and access to everything? Probably not. It's looking at best practices around your security, the multi-factor, that type of thing. So I would say that if you're looking at those types of backups, that's great. There's certainly a number of businesses out there that need that and provide that. Just make sure you really take the time to understand what it means to actually be supplying that type of backup. And also from, I suppose, an insurance point of view, make sure you're covered and make sure you like the customer themselves at their end is also covered with the type of service. And that's often a conversation between the two of you guys that you need to have to make that really solid. And I've actually seen a number of businesses that have done really well offering a really high quality either HIPAA or GDPR compliance backup. And often you can look at that and go, well, this is going to be a different type of product offering. So this could actually be an entirely different price point, because obviously there's more work that both of us sort of have to do there. So this is another ways that you could perhaps make other revenue streams from that, just by offering, an entirely different product. And also another segment that you can target. If you're looking to offer HIPAA backups, that opens you up to being able to talk to, healthcare and that type of thing. So super interesting things there from the business point of view. But I just stress to make sure you take the time to understand what your requirements and obligations are around that, because there's pretty heavy penalties if something goes wrong and you didn't actually follow, the required, processes for how you should be managing and providing that type of backup.
So, and clients talk. So like you said, that's an opportunity. If you have a medical practice that has to abide by HIPAA, which they all do. So one medical office manager ask another manager, who do y'all use for backup? Oh, well, we do HIPAA backups through XYZ company. And then that's another referral for you. So that's a great point you bring up. Absolutely.
It's also, just to jump in there, a bit of a real world scenario for us when we were offering backups here is, certainly the referrals in the word of mouth were quite interesting. The other thing is, if you're slightly interested, is to have a look around and see, actually, when you look into it, there's actually a number of, healthcare trade shows and that type of thing, and healthcare associations. In New Zealand, there's like the New Zealand Dental Association, They have their own conference and things like that. So whatever city or region you're in, there is likely that where you can actually have conversations with partners en masse for that type of thing, where you're actually able to find really interesting channels that not only you could do business with, but also market to specifically and maybe attend their trade shows and that type of thing. So it's really interesting. There's all these little sub, groups of different businesses and organizations. And when you're able to build a backup product that would fit that, you can dig a bit deeper and you can find, look, this is really interesting. There's going to be like a four-day health, conference there, and I can get a booth there for relatively cheap, offering, my HIPAA compliant backup solution. It's probably a great thing there. So
yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great point too. So a lot of people don't think about if you want to niche into a certain area, go to find out if they have a trade association. That's a great place to meet the decision makers and get new clients. So
especially, and it's also the same with, in some cases, it's also talking and educating to them. We went to some of these associations and booked a speaker's gig just to talk about, how backups would relate to them as, an organization, what they should be thinking about for their medical practice and that type of thing. So it also allows you the opportunity that you could become, the trusted expert or advisor in your group or your city or your organization of whatever sort of niche you're looking at. So yeah, some interesting things there for people that really want to, I suppose, take business development and think about this could actually be quite interesting of an area of business that we actually haven't tapped into yet. So yeah.
Sure. Well, one thing about MSPs, we're always looking to cut time through automation or certain processes and procedures. So how does that fall into backups as well? How can MSPs save themselves time? Are there certain features and backups that can automate certain things?
Yeah. So there's a number of different things. I'd probably say good quality monitoring. I mean, you want to be able to see, at a glance, high level, whether it's in the software itself or you utilize a third-party solution. You want to be able to know, okay, today, these are the things I need to be looking into. You don't want to, wade through screens of things trying to work out if something's broken or not. You just want the highlights of what the team's looking into. The other thing that's really important is obviously having really good email reporting, because often, everybody these days has their own, ticket solution and something like that. So if you're able to have really good email reporting, there should be a way that you're able to convert email reports into tickets. And most backup solutions these days will allow you to customize the type of email alert. So say, for example, you configure your backup solution to say, only send me an email when there's an error or a backup's missed a couple of days in a row. That's fantastic if you've got that being automatically converted to a ticket, because you're not looking at to find the problems, you're being alerted to it and you can simply address it. With backup, it's, the best way to save time with it and to be efficient about it is actually to be proactive, because it's the things that build up over time when things get really broken is the things that take the longest to engage, work out, and look to mitigate. So if you're being super proactive through, especially around your monitoring, that's probably the biggest time sink. So I'd say really customizable email reporting, really accessible reports, and, with backup, everything generally generates a log, I should say. So being able to have really clear error reporting, that's really tough. I mean, you don't want to use a solution if you get error reports and, it's like, oh, you only have to talk to the vendor and only they can decode it. You want things that you can look at a job log that yourself or your techs can look at and go, this actually gives me enough information that we can actually look in and start to do our own mediation steps from that there. It makes sense to us. So super critical to sort of look at those things.
So what about, there's a term and it seems to be like the all holy grail when it comes to backup, business continuity. So let's talk a little bit about business continuity. Should MSPs be deploying business continuity to all their clients?
Great question. That's a really interesting one. When you say business continuity for all customers, depending on what that is to the business, like say, for example, it's, 100-seat organization, 100 devices, you're imaging all their machines. They go, look, if our entire office gets ransomware, are you able to spin up all, 100 of our devices on AWS or something like that for us? That's obviously a quite a serious business continuity customer there, would you replicate all that same type of effort for, a small shop with 2 seats? Often this relates to the price point, because the continuity part of it often will take a really long amount of time, a lot of practice, especially around that you can actually offer that, and the time around it. So, in terms of rolling it out to all your customers, you might be that company that offers that as a service. Often a lot of people look at their customers on a case-by-case basis and perhaps offer that as an add-on service, or at a different price point for it. And depending on the organization, it's another thing that sort of during that discovery phase, you need to understand, for them to have continuity and for them to be, being able to recover as fast as possible, something was to happen to their hardware, you need to understand what you as an organization need to do. I mean, are you guys going to be fine to spin up, 100 VMs and devices at 2 a.m. on a Saturday? Are you guys prepared? Have you drilled it? Have you got it planned? That type of thing. So it's
like we
something
said,
that
test the restore.
Test and restore, work through the processes, that type of thing.
Yep.
But business continuity, obviously, that means they are heavily relying on you. So as opposed to going in there and going, yeah, let's do it for everybody, I think it would be looking at what clients on a case-to-case basis you'd be able to offer it for, and you feel confident that you could do it for those customers and service them well for that type of thing. But generally, we see that backup providers and MSPs that offer backup, the business continuity plans are generally, that option is at a different and a higher price point, just for the amount of effort the MSP will have to put into to be able to provide that.
That makes sense. So it doesn't sound like it's probably a great fit for all customers, but certainly an option for customers that you feel they would benefit from.
Yeah, totally. And it's also, it's part of the customer, understanding who they are, what they do. You get some businesses, say, for example, if they were only interested in having, a couple of files and Excel files backed up, they might not need necessarily the full continuity package. Where there is somebody that, you're fully imaging their machines and, you're doing full copies of their databases and things like that, that's an entirely different type of profile. So it's a customer by customer one, and it's also in terms of you and your organization, how you want to package, that continuity service up and offer that to, customers and things like that. Again, like a HIPAA style backup and that type of thing, that could be a package offering, and then, could have an add-on for, a business continuity offering and that type of thing, where you can build out and tell, customers and sell on what you actually do in that sort of continuity scenario. So just other interesting avenues that, looking at your business, you could open up new sort of revenue streams and that type of thing.
Well, that makes total sense. Well, I do have another question for you. When an MSP is utilizing a certain backup provider or solution in their business, and they want to go to a new solution or a new provider, is there anything that can make that task less erroneous?
Yeah, it's often on a case-by-case basis. I think if you're looking to migrate from one backup solution to another, the main thing that you'll need to be looking to consider is what happens to the existing data that you've backed up. Often it's in the existing backup solutions, backup format, it's stored somewhere. And if you're moving to another provider, you need to be able to look at it and, obviously work out, can I actually move that data over there? Because if you've been backing up years of, I suppose, archives for a certain customer, they're probably not going to be too happy if you say, look, we're actually changing backup platforms. By the way, everything I've been backing up for the last couple of years, we actually can't give back to you. Or you might have
to look cross-platform, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. So you might have to do a bit of phased approach if there's no automated tools or mechanisms, or it might be just looking at the customers in terms of their data. I mean, you might be able to restore it with the old backup platform and then back it up with the new backup platform and that type of thing. But again, I think this is one of these other things. It's a case-by-case basis that you can have a discussion with your customers and see where it is. If you've got a customer where you only ever keep 5 days of backups for them, that's nice and easy. If you're getting into the case of customers that have got multiple months and years of backups with you that they're requiring to store, it's things that you need to have a discussion with and obviously have that understanding with it. And it might even be that, if you look at moving across, there might not necessarily be a platform that simply converts it, but actually a bit of a business strategy. So you go, okay, from this day on, we're going to start capturing backups with the new solution. Those old backups, we're going to keep them in that solution. but we're going to keep them for, another 6 months or whatever, and just take a sort of general phased approach to switching over to the new solution. But it's something that you obviously need to plan, you need to work through, and obviously have a good understanding of customers and what are their requirements around the data and that type of thing.
That's right. Well, like we said, not one solution doesn't fit all. So,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
when IT professionals, especially IT business owners, are evaluating new backup solutions, what should they really be looking for in new solutions?
Yeah, I would say, it's easy enough to say you should look for the price first. I mean,
Sure.
Sure. Price is obviously important. People need to buy a solution that makes financial sense for them. The other biggest thing is to look at it in terms of, is this going to meet my requirements? And you should be thinking about it in terms of your existing customers. If you're offering backup, am I buying a solution that's going to be able to cover them? Or if I move away from the solution, does this mean I need to buy like 3 different solutions just to do what I'm doing today? That's where it starts to get messy, because then it's like, oh, cool, we've got 3 different solutions and the techs have to log into 3 different platforms and 3 different things that could potentially go wrong. So understanding your existing requirements for that is really key to get that. The other thing is to look forwards again and go, okay, we're going to have the same type of functionality as this new solution, but it might be offering 2 other things you actually haven't ever sold as business. And that's really interesting, that you can do some evaluation, go, oh, well, this has got a really easy module for doing this type of backup. Could this open up another revenue stream for me, or an add-on offering to my existing customers, or things like that. So price is definitely key. You don't want to buy something that's way out of your price range, because then that will obviously dictate how high you have to make the price to get that money back. So you need to be cognizant of that. I'd certainly take the time to evaluate and go, okay, if we adopt this backup platform, are there any competitive upgrade or I suppose deals for migrating across? Most backup providers will offer you a deal if you're moving for an existing backup platform. The other thing is probably to work through, okay, I've got to understand the pricing. Let me just see how that works out with the pricing that I charge customers. Is this going to allow me to move seamlessly, or by us adopting a new backup platform, it's going to be fantastic for us? Unfortunately, we're going to have to say to all customers, hey, unfortunately, our pricing is going to go up 15%.
Exactly.
How's that going to work? So yeah, definitely take the time to work through that, about what the impact is going to be for the customers as well, is something key. So a number of different things. I mean, I'd say don't get just too hung up on how cool the product sounds, but take some moments to think about your business, think about the customers and what potential changes that's going to be there. And probably the other thing is just to understand what sort of time investment is it going to be for that type of thing, for you guys to be going down that route of looking at those solutions, and any sort of migration or change or adopting it, that type of thing. All of that is time for yourself that you're not going to be able to, work with other customers, invest in the business and that type of thing. So work out, what the cost benefit of that is too.
Very good advice. Well, I've got a random question I want to ask you, and
Go for it.
we'll wrap up here with this last
Yep.
question, unless you have some excellent information you want to share. But I wanted to ask you, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of the term backup?
Protection. That's what it is. It's protection. It's protection from stuff going wrong.
Okay.
It's protection from somebody in your team. Perhaps they're not the most tech savvy person. Perhaps it's somebody in accounts opens a dodgy attachment on a PDF about an invoice to be paid. Accidental human error. Perhaps it's ransomware. Perhaps it's natural disaster. Perhaps it's just hardware that breaks. Backup is just about protecting data. And the other part of that, which should always be in the same breath, but protection comes first, is protecting data and restoring data. It's great if you can say to your customer, you back it up, you have to be able to give it back. So everything that we've talked about testing the restoring platform, working through the scenarios of not only can I restore it fine, but how can we give it back to the customer? Are we able to, provide those backup different scenarios? All of that really ties into that protection, because you want to be saying to your customers, don't worry, I got your business. When something goes wrong, give me a call, we've got you, because that's what they're paying you for. They're paying you for that protection and that peace of mind. So yeah, exactly what it means.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Josh, I can't thank you enough for your time today. What's the best way if an IT business owner wants to look at Comet Backup? for them to reach out and get started.
Yeah, absolutely. So just go to cometbackup.com. You can read through, obviously, all the services and different type of backups we offer. We also are able to, you can book in a call with one of the team here, have a talk about actually what's important for your business, what scenarios are you looking to cover, and what business cases are you perhaps looking to provide here. And we can certainly talk about that. It's really important that we get a good understanding of your business. And we'll be really upfront if you're looking for a solution and we can't provide that for you. We're more than happy to direct you to, one of the other people that might provide that type of thing, because at the end of the day, you guys just need to be protected. And if it's not with us, well, you need to be able to find the right person. So we're really happy in giving you, being really straight up about that type of thing. So yeah, cometbackup.com, or you can send us an email at hello@cometbackup.com, and yeah, we can go from there.
That sounds great. Well, Josh, thank you again for your time. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. We'll chat again soon. Thanks.
Cheers, guys. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See ya.